All right, here we fucking go. This is gonna be great. I'm gonna love this. I cannot, I cannot describe how entertained I am at what is going on with Concord and how much they are seething over the fact that a RPG-esque, Souls-like-esque games is absolutely blowing out what has been advertised as one of the most DEI woke games in the history of gaming that Sony has paid for and promised live action service. And before we get into the article, I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things going on with this. So one, Concord has released with a $40 price tag. It is going to be a live service game, which means Sony has promised the dev team years of payment to keep this game going with updates and new content. So the money's already spent on this game, and Sony is suffering greatly because they are going to keep paying for a game that nobody is playing, while the devs are absolutely seething at the fact that a monkey is doing better than their woke DEI game that has been in development for 8 years. We're not talking, regardless of how shitty the characters look, how disgusting the characters look, how terrible the gameplay is, how terrible the designs are for this game. A Chinese game with a monkey who refused DEI is absolutely blowing them out of the water, and they are having to backtrack on everything. Like the title of this article says, Concord devs reportedly removed LGBTQ plus tag from Steam after games were released and abysmal, terrible player counts. So, I mean, regardless of them trying to remove the alphabet tag, everybody still knows it's a terrible game with a $40 price tag that is getting blown out by a game that cost more because it refused DEI. And that's why I've seen a lot of videos of people say, oh, this isn't even that great of a game. I don't understand why people are playing it. Because it is a game that has been released without the woke narrative. And you compare that to a game that does absolutely nothing but force the woke narrative. I guess this is me doing an autopsy on this game and seeing why it died versus Black Myth Wukong that is doing millions of players daily. And that's not even a joke. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not doing anything. You know what? Let's go ahead and prove it here. Let's go ahead and go to the charts for Concord. Let's crank that to the max. So Friday, it's day of release. All-time peak of 697 players. Couldn't even break 700 players. In the last 24 hours, it is Monday afternoon now, it peaked at 402 players. Since Sunday afternoon, 400 players. Now, this is one of the games that was touted with their disgustingly ugly characters that enforced DEI narratives and went after anybody who said anything about this game being disgusting, calling them racist bigots. But those people then turned around and went to Chinese video games to buy a game about a monkey fighting. Now it sounds like I'm taking a dump on Black Myth Wukong, but that's not the case here. Granted, it is Chinese software. I have my own personal reasons for not wanting to buy it, but I am glad to see the numbers because as of right now, Monday afternoon, it's got 1.2 million players with a 24-hour peak of 2 million players and an all-time 4-day peak of 2.4 million players. Hell, okay, so let's make this a little bit more funny. 2,415,714 players. We can take away 2,415,000 players, and this would still do better than Concord. But maybe it has something to do with the Concord devs coming after players for not buying their DEI game. That's right. They went after all these companies, threatened them to make their games be a flop if they didn't include the DEI. The games are flopping, and now they're going after the player base. Well, the non-existent player base, I should say, because nobody's playing the game. Nobody wants to play this trash. And like I said in the intro, this is a live service game. Sony has already promised money going forward after release to have new updates come out, new content come out, so the devs are still getting paid. This is going to be what bankrupts these companies. It's going to be the DEI woke games threatening these companies to lose them millions of dollars and to harass them if they don't include all this woke narrative nonsense, only to get the devs in there for 8 years. Grant, this game has been in development for 8 years. I know it doesn't look like it, but it has. Now that they're in there, they released a game that doesn't even hit 700 players. And Sony now has to pay them more money over the next couple of years to keep releasing content for a game that didn't even sell 700 copies. It's absolutely fantastic. I am glad that these companies are getting stuck in this position where they were threatened to lose money if they didn't bend the knee. They have now bent the knee and are losing millions of dollars. And this is just on release, and are going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars in the future off of this game. And we can go right here to these absolute weirdo tweets talking about it's Concord release date. So insanely proud of the team and what they and we have accomplished as a labor of love like nothing else. Been playing it so much since early access started a few days ago. I'm so excited for it to be available to everybody. And I'm honored to have had this be my first AAA game. Was a huge learning experience, lots of struggles, but I'm glad to have gone through them. Time to go play. Well, how did that actually work out? Oh, right, you can't even muster 700 players. We quite literally watched the early access open beta be people that were trying to cover the game to make fun of it, and as soon as the game releases and you have to pay for it, they bail. They absolutely bailed. And we've got Sid Alpha going on this with some quotes here. So here we go. Of course, let's see. The horribly out of touch execs at Sony thought a $40 hero shooter that lacked the depth and variety was going to crush it in a market that is so oversaturated and has better alternatives for free. It's an embarrassment. And he is absolutely right. This game was started when Overwatch first released. The entire premise of this game, the reason it got the green light, is it was supposed to copy Overwatch. The problem is, well, let's go over the several problems. It tried to clone Overwatch. It took 8 years to produce. It has been infected with DEI nonsense. The dev team has zero marketing on this game because the only thing it's good at is claiming diversity. And look at our fat, overweight black women of color. The game has nothing. Absolutely nothing. That people who play video games want to play. And what's even worse is that these people think they did a good job. They are quite literally the out-of-touch, privileged, entitled little shits that would come out and say things like, why would I care about a bunch of talentless freaks hating on it? I'm sure having fun playing it and I wouldn't trade it for anything. That sounds like absolute cope. This again coming from the dev team themselves. If you don't buy our game, you're a talentless freak. Well, that's certainly not a way to encourage people to play. But I mean, I guess this goes back to me saying they're all broke, poor, and can't afford video games. and they eat cat food in their parents' basement. Because if their group was so, we'll say, privileged to be able to afford video games at this point, because they are expensive, but to come out and say people are talentless freaks for not paying for something that looks the way it does, and you go and compare that to Black Myth Wukong, that has been in the media for years as these games journalists try and slam it and make fun of it and poke at it and try and destroy it and stop it from ever being produced because they didn't bend the knee to the mob when they said, you have to include DEI or we will talk trash about your game and we will make sure you're not successful. They threatened the developers of this game, and the developers said, eat it. No. Go to hell. We're not doing it. And it comes out to be a massive success with 2.4 million players. I honestly believe by simply not pushing the DEI narrative combined with the attempts at blackmail and them standing strong, gamers have turned to Chinese software for good video games and have accepted it wholeheartedly because it's not woke. It doesn't include any of this weird gender nonsense. It doesn't include any of this political nonsense. It doesn't pander to certain groups of people. It doesn't try to be something it's not. It just tries to be a decent game. And it does that so well. And I think that's what pisses off these Concord devs, is that if they had just made attractive characters that people were, and here I'm going to get into something a little off topic here, that people would Rule 34. I doubt anybody's actually making Rule 34 of these tubs of lard in this game. The characters are disgusting. Nobody even wants to see them. And you compare that with Overwatch, where the Rule 34 is so rampant that Blizzard has tried to shut it down, which only makes things worse, but I guess they didn't know that. But you can see what actually draws crowds to your games. It's attractive characters. It's non-political stuff. It's being a good game. Focusing on the game mechanics, the character design, and avoiding the real-life politics. But that's it for this video, guys. Make sure you smash that like button. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share this one out. Until the next one, guys, be easy like sleazy.